A senior Palestinian official has slammed Serbia's decision to move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, al-Quds. In a tweet, the Secretary General of the Palestine Liberation Organization said the decision makes Palestine a victim of U.S. President Donald Trump's re-election ambitions. Saeb Shaath said that Trump's team will take any action to achieve re-election this November. Embassy relocation will make Serbia the first European state to follow the U.S. in making that move. Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to al-Quds in December 2017 after recognizing the occupied city as Israeli capital. Move faced criticism worldwide. And joining us now for this news review is Edward Corrigan, international lawyer from Ontario, Canada, and Saeb Shaath, author and journalist, joining us from Belfast. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program. I guess we'll start there with you, Mr. Shaath in Belfast. Your thoughts on, first of all, Donald Trump's ambitions, him and his team's ambitions, what they're willing to do, and the consequences of what they're willing to do to get reelected.
See, in the presidential race, Trump is in a bad position. His mishandling of the coronavirus and the disaster of all accounts was disastrous, his handling. The economy is severely depressed. It's worse today than during the Great Depression 100 years ago. Tens of millions of people out of jobs. And Trump is faced with the anti-racist protest, violent social upheaval in the country, and people refusing the institutional racism in the police and justice system. To win the election, he is using the U.S. internal fear factor, I want to call it. Using the social unrest, Trump is pressuring the people and presenting himself as the man who will safeguard law and order, as he said during the Republican Congress. He believes that the scenes of unrest and violence will bring voters to him who are afraid from chaos and disorder. Like when he did with the external politics, when he got the United Arab Emirates to sign normalization diplomatic ties with the Zionist entity, he was scaring them from an imaginary enemy, which is, or a threat as well, which is presented by Iran. And by creating that, he got them protection from Israel, as they claim. And he amplified that, and he milked the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis. Today, as a result of that, you see the Israelis building spying military bases in a Yemeni island called Socotra in the Arabic Sea in there. And they having in the Bab el-Mandeb an Israeli outpost monitoring and spying in the region and the maritime traffic in the area. Palestine always became a victim for his election ambitions. And that's why when Trump was presiding over talks between Kosovo and Serbia, after 21 years passed since NATO flattened Serbia, which today in real terms Serbia is an occupied country by the United States of America. And he's bullying not just Serbia and Kosovo. Kosovo is a product of what he at the time they were calling the Kosovo Free Army, which is a Syrian Free Army was modeled according to that. So they formed Netanyahu. They said Kosovo will formally normalize a relationship with you, and will in the future as well for a suit move, create an embassy or put its own embassy in Jerusalem. So he's using his own puppets, these to create an imaginary political victories.
Interesting point there, and which brings me to you, Mr. Edward Corrigan. Now I'd like to welcome you to the program. So now basically Donald Trump has used the Palestinians as a pawn for his political ambitions twice now. Once in the UAE Tel Aviv normalization of ties deal, and now to Mr. Shaath's point that he just made there, a second time, albeit more of an illusionary thing, but he's using Serbia now to, again, victimize the Palestinians at the cost of trying to get him re-election. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I think that there's a number of aspects that have to be considered. The primary one is the strength of the pro-Palestinian Arab and Muslim lobby in the United States, which is almost non-existent. And unfortunately, they take one step forward and two steps back. It's dismal. And you end up having, the Republican Party and the Christian Zionist element in it all catering to Israel, and Israel and its supporters exploit that. But actually, the most American Jews probably support the Democratic Party, but Biden is a strong or even more stronger Zionist than Donald Trump is, and Kamala Harris, his husband, is Jewish, and she's got a very good record, and on the Israeli issue, and the Palestinians have nothing. In fact, there's the late Linda Mansour said she endorsed Biden, but Biden then attacked her. Said he didn't accept the endorsement and attacked her and tried to separate himself as much as possible. Now, there are millions of Muslims in the United States. I would suspect there's more Muslims in the United States than there are Jews. And, there's around the world, there's over 350 million Arabs, if not more. And you have, 6 or 7 million Palestinians. But, their concept of organization defies explanation. They fight amongst themselves. They want to build a house or a structure, and they start with the roof. And after a while, they can hold the roof up, and then people walk away, and the whole thing collapses, and you're back with nothing except a pile of rubble. One of the Israeli papers, the Israel Times, wrote an article about, why was there no reaction from the Arabs? And it was a whimper and nothing substantive. And when Serbia sees that, and, it's quite remarkable, but I think in a strange way, anti-Semitism actually helps it. They're afraid of Israel. They're afraid of the American Jewish community, and they think that the American Jewish community and the Zionists have exaggerated power in the United States, and that by aligning themselves with Israel, somehow they'll get the protection of that, organized Jewish community in the United States and protection from Israel. But I think most Serbians are still angry at the breakup of Yugoslavia, the bombing from NATO, the attacks from the United States. Israel was involved with some of them selling arms and whatever. So I'm kind of surprised that Serbia is doing it, because their historic ally is Russia. They're tied in with a lot of the Slavs in Europe. So to me, this seems like a very unusual maneuver, and I don't see any benefit for Serbia, okay? They may think that they're going to get under the wing of Trump or Biden, but they're both exactly the same. And when it comes to Israel, they both try to compete to see who is going to be the better friend of Israel. And so there's no gain there. But a lot of it is the weakness of the Palestinians and the Muslim community and the Arab community. A number of years ago, a Palestinian, actually sort of friend of mine, Leah Zarek, gave a paper saying part of the problem that the Arabs have is they don't have a strong sense of civil society. So they don't build civil structures like for professions and for political parties. And their interest is a lot of it's focused on religion. And then you even have people going around saying it's haram to vote in the United States. I've had Arabs say that to me, or Muslims. And at one point, there was even Muslims in Toronto, where there's a huge Muslim. They're passing out pamphlets outside the mosque saying that it was haram to vote. And, voting is how you measure politics and political opinion and how you express power in the United States, not to also money. But, most Arabs and most Palestinians, don't know what's going on, don't care. They hide from it. And if they have any interest, they're just spectators. They don't participate. There's some few exceptions. But,
Okay.
if you can ignore the Arab community and the Muslim community in the United States and in Canada and to a lesser extent in Europe, this is why everybody is catering to Israel and ignoring the Arabs. And the Arabs aren't even making a whimper about it in their own right. So what
Thank you,
do
Edward.
you expect other countries to do?
Let me swing over to Saeb now. Saeb, I saw you agree with and disagree with some of the things Edward was saying. Go ahead.
I totally disagree with everything he said, to be honest with you. First of all, I don't want to go into democracy and into this and why the Arabs this or that. The first golden ever empire was created in Egypt. The first cultures and civilization came from Palestine, Egypt, Persia, Iraq, these countries. The first people to teach people about philosophy and science and educate them came from that region. Language, written language, alphabet, alpha, beta, that came from Syria. I don't want to, science itself, which is today Europe and the United States of America say they are the Western civilization, came originally from that area. And I don't want to go on and on. About Serbia, the points he mentioned, why Serbia is not benefiting. Today, I want to correct some information for your guest. Serbia is a puppet regime installed in there by United States of America after NATO destroyed the country. And Kosovo is the same. Kosovo is created from a NATO kind terror group. UNA exactly was formed, as I said earlier on. Syria, a free army, was formed in the model of Kosovo, which was created by the CIA. So these countries, they are not sovereign real states, which you can see what they are benefiting or not. They are an American puppet. And these are the last cards the United States of America pull out of its own pockets, force them to do whatever they want to show Trump he is doing some sort of political game. Trump today called Netanyahu during the meeting on Friday with Kosovo Prime Minister Abdullah Hatti and congratulated the two leaders for their decision, which Trump has made the decision for Hatti, to say that Kosovo will open an embassy in Jerusalem in the future. The whole idea of that, even when you take, they want the Israelis and the United States of America to bring some reactionary Arabic and Muslim regimes. These things, nothing to do with Islam or with Arabism, is to do with forces, reactionary forces. You can have an Arab Zionist exactly like you have a Christian Zionist or American Zionist in there. So Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, to me, they are Zionist regimes installed in the region. They were thugs before they created their states, the United States of America and the British, but thugs to control these areas. These thugs today, they are kingdom, tyrannical kingdom, respected by the United States of America when they slaughter and kill their own journalists and their own citizens, because the United States of America can milk them and use them whenever they want. So the Netanyahu today and these reactionary forces, they want to bring whoever they can pressurize from the Arabs or Islamic countries or international to corner the Palestinians so they can go ahead with the deal of the century. And the Palestinian cannot reject that. But I'm going to tell my friends, the Palestinian will reject that. The Palestinian can take a stand even if the whole world was against them. They will fight that and they will cleanse them like their ancestors before. They cleansed the Crusaders from Palestine. They cleansed the British and the French occupation in Palestine with Bonaparte when he came to occupy Palestine in 1799. They kept and they fought the British so hard before the 1917. And then the British Empire came with an alliance and occupied the land and installed Israel. So resistance will continue. And those people, they are very aware of their history and they know what lies ahead in their future, a free, independent Palestine.
We only have about a minute left, Edward. I'm going to let you get the last word, and let's try to shift back on U.S. President Donald Trump and how little he understands the geopolitics and the sensitivity of issues in the Middle East, especially when it comes between Palestinians and Israelis. He's done nothing to better any kind of mediation or any kind of living standards for Palestinians in his 4 years.
Donald Trump understands the reality in realpolitik, okay? He doesn't care about the Palestinians or even the Saudis unless he can sell them arms and exploit their oil and get them to invest their money in the United States or Europe. You know, it's a pragmatic point, but he does respond to political power in the United States. Now, the four congresswomen, AOC, and there's a Palestinian member of the United States Congress now. There are four people who got elected. There are a handful of other people, but that's what they count on. And the money that the rich Zionists put into the American politics, you've got billionaires bankrolling who support Israel, bankrolling the Republican Party. You've got billionaires who support Israel, bankrolling the Democratic Party. Now there's a bit of a split where a lot of the American Jews don't like Trump and they don't like the occupation like Netanyahu. But I asked my friend, stop living in the past. The stuff he's talking about, is from like the 6th century and on. And Saladin was Kurdish. Okay, he was the great victor and drove the Crusaders out of Palestine. So I know the history, but the reality on the ground is that there is basically almost no political pressure on the American administration, and you have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party chasing after money and contributions from the Zionist lobby and fighting over the Christian Zionist vote. And that's what the reality is, okay? And you can't ignore it and say, well, we're going to get free one day, but unless you start doing things, you've got to build something and then start to win. And like when Serbia, yes, I agree, it's a state it's a puppet state of the Americans, but most Serbs do not like the Americans and hate the Americans what they did to the country.
As most puppet states. And that's true for most puppet states. They're very well said. Both of you, thank you for your respective contributions to the program. We have to wrap it up. Edward Corrigan there from Ontario, Canada, and Saeb Shaath joining us out of Belfast. And viewers, that's a wrap for the segments of your Press TV's News Review. Hope you enjoyed it, and bye-bye for now.